Hi, and welcome to the Eagle Eye podcast. I am joined today by two fantastic guests, Amir Hoss, who is the CEO of Eaigle, and Stefan Surpitski, who is the Vice President of Sales here at Overhaul. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, David, and thanks for having us.
It's my pleasure. Amir, first of all, tell us a little bit about Eaigle. You've been doing some incredible work, and obviously AI is a big part of that. So just tell us a little bit about what you're achieving over at Eaigle.
Thanks, David. At Eagle, we are basically an automation platform and very focused on a very niche market in the supply chain, and that is focusing on the yard. The scope of our automation is start from the gate to loading dock and vice versa. And that's what we've been focusing on. That's a problem that we identified through our relationship with one of the large grocery retailers in North America. I built a solution for them, learned the market from them, and then took it beyond them to 4 years ago. It's a computer vision platform, and we provide two simple service to customer within that scope of work. One is we provide automation, we make the process unmanned, paperless. And second, we flag any non-compliancy. So any events that is non-compliant, whether paperwork doesn't match the load and the truck, or truck pulling the wrong road, or it's simply a non-compliancy or a theft activity, these are events that we catch and we report and take corrective action.
So that's really fascinating, Amir. So this was customer driven, but it was really then looking at the problem and saying, okay, is there a different way to approach this? And how does AI play a role there?
So the whole thing is AI, but there are two key areas that AI leads in the solution. One is on the computer vision piece of that and analyzing the video feed in real time. So all the cameras in the gate and in the yard and the loading dock get fed to our own algorithm, which are machine learning based, analyze in real time and provide output in real time. That's why it is a very transactional real time basis. Trucks are coming in, get directed to the next destination or next stops within that facility. So computer vision piece is one side. The second piece is the mass data that get flowed to our platform. The platform has integration to warehouse management system, transportation management system, yard management system, a scheduling system, and more. And so this data organically have to come to the system because the system sort of is the main operating system in the yard and in the gate. And so the second piece part of AI is that how you orchestrate all this data that coming in to provide proper optimization in the gate, yard, and dock operations.
No, it's wonderful to see. And, one of the challenges from a pure visibility perspective in supply chain has been, there's been so many, if you like, dark places whereby we just haven't been able to get that level of visibility. And that then, if you like, corrupts the rest of the visibility data. Now, Stefan, you work with some of our biggest customers and some of the biggest companies in the world. When, every chief supply chain officer right now has been tasked to put AI into their supply chain, what are you hearing from a day-to-day perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we rewind, 10 or 15 years, right, it was capture the data. Everyone was just data, just all of this data, and it was overload. And you couldn't make heads or tails of it, or to make heads or tails of it, you really had to, employ a lot of manual, processes into your data scientist team and to drive any type of meaningful analytics. So I think what we're hearing today, right, it's far beyond, as far as the supply chain and risk visibility side of things, it's far beyond just putting dots on the map, right? Folks have 15 years of historical data. They want to understand what kind of trends, they can drive from that, whether it's predictive insights, intelligent alerting, right? Being able to predict that something is happening before it happens and mitigate that, before you have an event as opposed to during an event. They want actionable recommendations, right? The ability to have that automated decision support, right? So perhaps, in some industries that decision support is still verified by a human being that's reviewing that, right? Double checking it. And I think that probably shifts, in the next year to 18 months where folks have more trust in the tools. But you really want that decision support to help you, streamline all of these, manual processes and investigations and things like that folks have to do, right? So I think those are the four kind of biggest areas where folks are looking to optimize, leveraging AI and machine learning.
And Amir, as you've gone on this journey, Have you found the results to be surprising? Have your customers been surprised at the results in terms of just the activity going into the yard, the amount of inefficiency, if you like, that was built in there? Like, what are you seeing?
Great question. And I actually want to build on what also Stefan mentioned, that let's say in our space, which is yard management and optimization of operation in the yard, the industry went through a transition, I think, after 2008. And that's a natural evolution of a technology in the market. But I think it took so long. What we saw back in 10, 15 years ago was, yeah, YMSs came to the picture. And as Stefan said, they provide that first layer of, okay, data visibility to some extent, not full. But at the end of the day, it became a data dump. And so what customers do in the yard now is very similar to what they used to do 10, 12 years ago. And so that's, yeah, so it became a real data dump, as Stefan mentioned. And but nobody took action on that data. So industry went through the first layer of digitization, but there was no automation layer on top of that. And so when we come in here and really automate the YMS, automate the gate, and they see, wow, it becomes a truly, we call it zero wait yard, unmanned yard, and zero paper yard. That's what the customer sees, because there was a true disconnect between the fleet side and the TMS and what's happening within the four walls. And so there was a black hole in between, which was, we call it four fence. So you had the four walls and four fence. So the conversation on the shipper side was always on the four walls. Now it shifted to four fence because the automation there didn't exist before. So now is the time that all the money have to be flown there to provide real automation there. And so that's where our type of collaboration with Overhaul come to the picture, because we're trying to automate the yard, yes, but we have to have a real-time connectivity to on the fleet size, and that's where this whole collaboration comes to the picture to take the automation to the next level.
I just wanted to double click that kind of the idea around disconnect, because, I think, there's lots of tooling around artificial intelligence, right? But it still can be very siloed. And so having the ability to work with partners that are pulling in all of these disparate sources of data, through collaboration, through meaningful partnerships, is really truly drives significant value, right? And that's where, again, the ability to look at this data, through artificial intelligence and other means really helps to create those meaningful insights, right? It's building layers upon layers upon layers of data, right? So it's temperature, it's visibility, it's yard management, and you can just kind of build, the value becomes exponentially greater as you bring in more sources of.
Right. And so I do think that, we tend to think of AI as a thing. We tend to think of it as maybe it's an app, maybe it's an agent. But in this case in particular, it actually becomes the connective tissue. It actually becomes the ability to combine, to your point, disparate sources of data to create a more holistic view of everything that's happening. And, part of the trick in terms of, as Overhaul, as we think about security, as we think about the legitimacy of those transactions and those handoffs in a supply chain in cargo in transit, having all of those, if you like, blind spots suddenly visible becomes incredibly important, because it means that you've got it from true origin right the way through to destination. And destination is no longer just a geofence. It's actually to a specific point in a yard that we know exactly what is happening there. And, I've always thought that, to a certain extent, the physical supply chain had been lagged by the digital supply chain. And over the last 10 years, what's happened is technology has caught up. And now technology is starting to surpass the physical supply chain. If I take Amir, if I take your technology one step further, it's autonomous vehicles in the yard. And so suddenly you're then understanding what's coming in. The autonomous vehicles in the yard can then be directed through AI to actually optimize, for the first time, to actually optimize the movement of cargo into the dock door, which is going to just mean a completely different warehousing experience, a completely different product flow through experience. It's going to be a significant change, and it's happening right now. Like, what you've done is taken the first step, combining that with Overhaul's technology, and that's going to allow us full transparency end to end. And then the next wave is going to be as exciting, because you can now layer your technology over existing architecture, over existing camera systems, to be able to create that next level of visibility. So that's why I started to get excited about seeing the supply chain actually become, start to reach that autonomous layer, and it starts to make its own decisions. scary as that sounds, it's actually not. It's all just pure math. It's all just actually managing all of those numbers.
No, 100%, David. And again, that's a normal evolution that we were expecting in the yard. If you look at, I'm coming from auto manufacturing background. If you look at the manufacturing from 15 years ago, you started seeing robots moving the items within the four walls of the warehouse, moving from one department to the other department, and you try to automate as much as possible because second matters. You see the same evolution in the yard with you see an initiative of Yard of the Future with a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. And the first line item in Yard of the Future is autonomous vehicle, autonomous shunting, and autonomous yard. And for industry to move ahead to fully autonomous, you can't have a manual piece integrated to an autonomous, but it has to be end-to-end autonomous. And so autonomous shunter have to work with the autonomous yard. And so you need to have that foundation of automation already built into the yard to be able to communicate to the autonomous shunting machine. On the other side, autonomous trucking that are entering through the gate, an autonomous truck cannot deal or interact with a manual gate. It's got to be an autonomous gate. So there have to be that real-time transaction between the fleet and the warehouse to be able to handle that. And so right now, with collaboration with again, partners like Overhaul, we're trying to go through that transition to a full autonomous until the full autonomous truck basically come to the picture. And then at that time, it becomes full visibility and automation in combination of us and partners like Overhaul to handle between the fleet and the yard and the warehouse.
And Stefan, I think this is important because, you know, a lot of supply chains now are trying to figure out how do I AI my supply chain? What do I have to do to make it AI? And you know, my thinking on it is it's not what you do yourself, it's the solutions that you deploy in your supply chain which actually bring you to that, if you like, cognitive level. And I think whenever when you look at Risk GPT and the overall products and you combine that with something like Eagle, it starts to build out that AI model whereby you're really taking your supply chain data and thinking to that next level. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And what's at the core of that for me, Dave, is organizations that are focused on building the future, not catching up to the status quo, right? And there's been a lot of innovation, right, especially in the last 5 years. I think driven by a lot of attention around kind of some of the supply chain shortages we saw during COVID. But you saw huge amounts of investment coming into this space. And working with partners that are leveraging those niche technologies and bringing it together on your behalf is critical, right? If you're going to continue to keep pace, if we think of Ohm's law, right, that's happening in supply chain today. Right? There's a consistently happening. And so, I think that is really critical to work with partners that are thinking of the future, agile, pulling in that technology in order to be able to leverage the future yard, the future of supply chain, the future of in-transit risk management, right? So I think that's critical.
And I think to add to Ohm's law, I would put in Amara's law. So Roy Amara was a futurist out at Stanford in the 70s, and his law was really foundational around we tend to overestimate the impact of technology in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. And I fully believe that we're at that point of inflection whereby, a year ago it was, there's going to be no jobs, there's going to be no people, everything will be AI. And there was a level of disillusionment. But now, as we start to see, what we're doing at Overhaul, when we partner with solutions like Eagle, we're starting to see the true potential of what this next wave of technology will be able to do. And we haven't even completely figured it out yet. I mean, when you take it a step further with, autonomous shunting and autonomous trucks coming into that yard, dark warehouses, automatic picking machines, all of those different things, it starts to very roughly paint a picture of what a future supply chain might look like, and super exciting that we're all in the middle of it. Man, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate your insights and look forward to coming back and talking about this topic in about 6 months' time whenever we've made the next leap. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the Eagle Eye podcast. And please like us on YouTube and subscribe if you want to hear more. Thank you.